The next speaker, Mr. Mayor, is Mr. Harold Brown. Mr. Brown.
Mr. Harold Brown, how are you?
Mayor, council, staff, I want to take an opportunity to thank you for the presentation that was made over at Foothills Church. Graham Mitchell, our Chief of Police, Jeff Davis, and Frank came over to a pastor's meeting, a senior pastor's meeting that's been going on for about 20 years. And they presented the resolution or the law that has been put in place as far as not feeding homeless in the parks. And many of the pastors that were represented at the meeting, many of their churches actually do this. And it was a very, very good presentation. And the pastors on a whole, I can't speak for all of them right now today, but I know in conversations that we had, a lot of ideas were starting to be sprung forward on how we can still work our faith and our calling to feed the poor, to feed the homeless and help people in those situations, and how we might do it differently than the way it's been happening, at least temporarily, while we go through this situation. We were told that it was a temporary thing, that this is not something that's going to necessarily last forever, and I know some people are concerned about that. As a professional that works in this area for the last 27 years, I am the CEO of the East County Transitional Living Center. We just saw the video up there. We're housing, feeding, and clothing hundreds of people every single day. We provide 400,000 in healthy meals a year to those people who are coming off the streets and getting back into life, and I agree wholeheartedly with our health care individual that just came up and spoke to the fact that without nutrition, people don't do the right thing. It's part of the coming back together and getting back into life, is to be fed, to be clothed, to be loved, to be cared for. And as the churches in El Cajon and in East County, we're going to do that. We're going to reach out. We're going to help the homeless. We're going to share our faith with them. But many of them who might have been doing it in the park are going to start doing it possibly inside their churches. So we're looking for alternative ways to comply with what you have put out as far as the law. Romans 13:1 tells us we're to comply with all of the laws that are put forth, and we want to do that. And I think I can probably pretty confidently speak for all the pastors that meet at that meeting every month that we absolutely support the city. We are wholeheartedly behind it, and really appreciated the city reaching out. And Graham, you did a great job in your presentation to kind of let us know exactly what was going on, why it was going on, and the reasoning behind it. And I think a lot of good stuff is going to come out of this, that a lot of people will be able to get help. I would suggest that anyone who wants to meet a homeless person and talk to a homeless person, please do that. They're people. It's horrible that we put homeless brand on them. These are just folks that are currently without a residence, but they're people. And if you're going to do that, please advise them to go down to Crisis House, go through the VSBIT app thing and find out if they can get help. They can come up to East County Transitional Living Center. We have programs for people to come into, Salvation Army, great programs for people to come into. There's a lot of help out there for people who want to get help. So thank you for your time.
I think there's a question, Harold. Gary?
Harold, would you tell us a little bit about how many women and children and men are in your program?
Currently, we have about 370, I think 78 today. We had 118 children ranging from newborn up to 17 years old, and then the rest families. We're currently full. We don't have an open room for families. One of the reasons why we're expanding the program is I have hundreds of families on waiting lists to come into the program. But we do have openings for single men, single women, and if you are a family with children, please come up and do an intake, and we'll get you in as soon as we can.
Well, Harold, I have a message from Michael for you. For those of you who don't know, that about 2 years ago, I called Harold and said, I have a couple rooms available at my house. How about a couple of your graduates would see if they'd like to move in? And they did. It worked out wonderfully. One of them is still at my house. He's like a member of the family. I'd encourage everybody to do that. it's the way that we can all personally help people and give them a second chance. And it's just been wonderful, so Michael says hello.
Okay, thank you, guys.
Hold on, Harold, more questions for you. Bob?
Harold, if a family comes to you and they have children, do you have a spot for them now? Are you going to build a new building and that's where they're going to?
Yeah, there's daily rooms, empty rooms are filled up. If I actually told you how many people, we've had over 800 people ask us for housing in the last 3 years that have children, over 800 on the list. Obviously, a lot of those people have found housing and found places to go. In the last 90 days, I've had over 90 intakes, families who have come into the facility, asked us to place them in housing. So when a room opens, we fill it right away. One of the beautiful things about our society right now, and a little bit of detriment, but you got these things. And almost everyone has one, and so we're able to get a hold of a family right away and get them into a room. So I rarely have rooms open for more than a day. However, we are planning on building 2 buildings to expand the programs down there, which will open up the ability for 40 more families to come in. Currently, I have 60 family rooms that are full, and we're looking to have 100 family rooms. And, it'd be great if this problem wasn't with us, but we all know that that's not going to be the case. People fall out of life, fall out of problems. It's not necessarily because of one thing or another. Homelessness is it's a complicated situation, many different reasons why people fall into problems. And when they do, there's a lot of help out there for them. They just have to be willing to seek it out.
Have you thought about, when you build your building, going up to 3rd or 4th floor to make more room for more families?
I don't know that. I'll have to turn that over to the city staff and the building department and stuff. I'd like to build it as high as we can build it, but that's not.
I mean, we need to get as many facilities as we can as far as helping some of these people.
Yeah.
Now, what's your experience been when your people confront the homeless out in the community, and what's their attitude as far as would you like to have some help? Would you like to, change your life? And what do they say? And what are some of the problems with the homeless that are still out there that want to be out there?
Again, homelessness is a complicated situation. It usually takes 4 or 5 touches with someone before they're going to be willing to come in and receive help, especially if they've been out on the street for any period of time. It's scary out on the street. It's not easy to be out on the street. Many people look at homeless people and they say, well, all they need is a job. Well, more than likely, if you just gave them a job right away, they'd fail, and it'd just be another line of long failures because they're not mentally, physically, or even spiritually capable of holding a job at the moment. Doesn't mean they won't be with some help. But with help, almost all of them can be productive members again in society. Many people have damaged their brains, damaged their bodies with drugs and alcohol, and there's programs for them as well. There's a lot of help out there. It's just a matter of getting through the fears that people have of receiving help and getting back used to somebody telling you what to do. A lot of people don't like somebody telling them what to do.
Now, I've used some of your people to do odd things around the house, digging ditches, tearing out solarium, tearing out a jacuzzi, tearing out a kitchen, things like that. If people need somebody to come out and do some work, hard work, I even had an electrician once that had to unhook some electrical stuff that we had on the solarium. But anyway, what do they need to do in order to contact you and make use of some of these people?
Well, if you'd like to help us out and give us work therapy opportunities, you can contact us at 619-442-0457, or come down to the center and talk to me over at 1527 East Main Street. We look for work therapy opportunities for men and women to actually do a day's work, to do a job, to do something, to get them back into the habit of working. And that's a really foundational part of our program, is to put people back to work. The Bible says you don't work, you don't eat. And so, we're talking about feeding, we're talking about eating. We need to work to eat. And it's important. It puts that thing back inside of everybody that they need as a purpose for life. We like to call ourselves hope dealers. We used to be dope dealers, but now we're hope dealers. Many of us that were in that situation. I was homeless, 30 years ago. I understand homelessness. I deal with it all the time, and we work with people all the time. Sometimes the worst thing you can do is just hand somebody some food, especially right now, the way it is. We were talking about the possibility of having permits to be able to come down and do feedings, so that those that were doing the feedings were licensed to do it. They had food handlers cards. The city knows what's happening at that time. There's cleanup that happens with it. There's a lot of ideas being thrown back and forth of what we can do other than just say, no, we're not going to feed anybody. I don't think that's the intent of what we're talking about today. There's plenty of places out there that people can go get something to eat. It's an interesting problem. It's our problem. We have it to fix, and certainly the churches want to be a real big part of that.
And getting back to the work therapy, the people that I've had have just been wonderful people, and they're just really hard workers. I mean, I couldn't do the things they're doing, even if I was 30 years younger. I couldn't do it, but they're really hard-working people, and every time I've called Harold and asked him, can I get a couple people, and we've had a daughter move in and out of our house 2 or 3 times. They moved all the furniture and things like that. So there's all kinds of odd jobs. So if you need anything like that at your home, or you know a friend, give the El Cajon Transitional Living Center a call and use some of these people and get some of their therapy for them. Thank you, Harold.
Thank you, Doc. Anybody else?
Hey, Harold. So I own a gift card charity that we do once a year for homeless people. Do you endorse the idea of people going that route because it's cleaner, right?
Yes.
Giving out $10 gift cards or things like that?
I would fully support that idea. I think that's a great idea, Ben. That way they can go over to McDonald's or something, sit down, just like anybody else, and sit down and have a meal. One of the things that we do at Christmas time, one of the things that really was very interesting to me over the years, at Christmas parties where you do all the present giveaways and all the toy giveaways and everything, the person that was missing was Dad. Dads of these homeless children that felt like, oh my gosh, I'm not providing for my kid, but there's my kids getting toys and presents from everybody else. And what we generally do is we try to just give gift cards to the parents and let them go buy the presents for the kids. Same exact principle. Instead of, giving them a sandwich or making a sandwich somewhere, or even bringing sandwiches out to the park, go get some gift cards.
So I'll be contacting you because we just did our gift card charity. I think it was in September. My wife and I own it, and I think we had thousands of dollars in gift cards. We still have some. We document everything that we give. It's on YouTube. So we'll reach out to him and give you whatever we have left.
Yep. Thank you, Ben. Thank you, guys.
Harold, you're not done yet.
Sorry, not done yet. We're going on. You mentioned there's several places in town where you can get something to eat. You serve how many meals a day?
Well, we serve about 350 meals at lunch, at breakfast, and at dinner. We serve about 65 meals up in Del Zura and about 25 meals every month. So it's somewhere around 1,500 to 1,500 meals a day.
Meals a day. There are some other churches in town that do that. Do you know who some of them might be?
Meridian Baptist Church over on 3rd, they have I believe a once-a-month thing where on Wednesday nights they'll have a church service, and then afterwards they have a congregate feeding, and if you're there at the church service, you're part of the congregation. And that's kind of the direction that I think a lot of the churches are going to go back into. One of the things that we believe as pastors and people of faith is the thing that really heals somebody is the Word of God. And so if they get some spiritual food and some physical food, and then some fellowship in a fellowship hall with other people who aren't looking down at them or looking up at them, but looking right at them and saying, yeah, you're a person too, and we want to show you love, and we want to show you respect, and we want to have fellowship with you and find out who you are and what you're doing. So many of these folks that are out there, I just read an article called, I think it's Miracles something it was called, but people are going out and using Facebook and literally interviewing folks that are on the streets that are homeless and say, hey, could I do a little interview with you? Where are you from? Do you mind if I post this in your area? And they post these Facebook videos up in the area for people, and people contact them back because they've been looking for this person for 8 or 10 years or 15 years. But the person's homeless, they messed their life up 15, 20 years ago, and they don't realize their family's still looking for them. You just got to know people and get to know people. They're people. And I think it's one of the best ways that we as the church collectively can actually reach out, open up our congregation and say, hey, come on in, sit down, be a part of the service, and then afterwards we're going to have a meal with the rest of the congregation. You're a part of the congregation. So I don't think we'd be breaking any laws by doing that.
I think one of the things that we have to realize is what we've been doing in the past isn't working.
Yeah, it doesn't work.
So we must do something different. And you mentioned 5 or 6 touches before somebody will trust you. So it seems like we must do something different to get them to have some kind of human interaction with somebody.
Right.
And in some cases, that's going to be a faith-based organization. There's 7 here in El Cajon that provide meals on a regular basis, including Crisis House, which is not a faith-based organization for those who say, well, it's not fair to make them to go to a faith-based organization for food. So Crisis House is an example of one that does not require a faith-based environment.
Right.
There are also over 50 outlets for homeless people to get meals in El Cajon using EBT cards, which they can get at the County Health and Human Services Agency right behind us.
Yep.
In fact, staff has, what kind of places are these EBT cards accepted at?
So, Councilmember Goebel and the rest of the City Council, there is actually an authorized list, and this is actually if you were food insecure and you had EBT, you could call 211 and get the full list. But some of them would be Jack in the Box, Pizza Hut, Momo's Bagel Cafe, Carl's Jr., Cafe Bistro, Denny's, KFC, Domino's, Rally's, Wendy's. Those are just a few.
Every homeless person in El Cajon can get a meal.
That's right.
And they can go to Crisis House to say, I don't know how to apply for these EBT cards, can you help me? Yes, they can do that. So there's this misconception that we're putting a ban on feeding homeless, and that's not the case. In fact, the city of San Diego has a similar ban. You have to be permitted to serve homeless in a park. You can't just show up and serve food in a park in the city of San Diego. So we're not pioneering something here. And the fact that there are over 50 locations, including faith-based and non-faith-based, for a homeless person to get a meal every day in the city is a great solution, in addition to the city's response of funding over $340,000 of services to the homeless.
Yes.
We have a housing navigator. We have a pet shelter. If you have pets, we'll hold on to your pets for a short period of time during transition. We will pay for reunification if you want to travel to get back to a family member. We have an app that a homeless person can dial to say, I need food, I need shelter right now, and they'll get a response. The housing navigator will help match them with permanent housing with supportive services from the County of San Diego for mental health, substance abuse. I don't know of a city that has a wider response and commitment per capita than the city of El Cajon. And I appreciate your part in the Transitional Living Center. Not everybody's meant for a Transitional Living Center. You have rules for a reason. For those that don't want rules, there still is an
There's still
answer.
help. There's still help.
Both faith-based and non-faith-based.
And we house, and we're getting ready to do the count, which the count will happen in late January again. And last year's count, if you looked at it, the city of El Cajon literally houses over 50% of its homeless population. And there's not another city, I think, that can make that claim. So I think the city's doing a great job. Thank you. Anybody else?
Let me make sure. Anybody else?
Thank you.
All right, I reluctantly let you go. Thanks, Harold.
Next speaker, we have Mr. Mark Lane.
Mr. Lane, welcome.
How you doing? So I had some prepared comments, but since I just sat through your carefully scripted and prepared question and answer session for public commentary, I'll address some of that stuff. For most of my 52 years, I've been feeding the homeless through stuff my mother did, our church when I was growing up. I'm the founder of Breaking Bread Project here in San Diego. Mr. Colascio, I'd love if you listen to me instead of what you do when other people talk when you don't like them, what they're saying. Breaking Bread Project, we sit down with homeless people, we bring people out one-on-one, have a meal with them, and talk to them, get to know them. First time I did it, the woman said, "You see me?" And I said, "Of course I see you." She said, "No, you see me." And I said, "I don't know what you mean." She said, "Everybody walks by, they walk around, they cross the street, you see me." So, banning, which is what you're doing, Mr. Goebel, of feeding the homeless in the public areas, goes against everything we are as a country, people that call themselves Christians. I appreciate what the pastor is doing and what he said, but by his own admission, he's not helping everyone here in the city. There's plenty of homeless still on the streets that are not getting those services. Mr. Goebel, find it entertaining that you talk about EBT and they can use it all over the place when you're part of the party that's cutting EBT all across the country. Find it amusing in a not a great way that you talk about a beautiful app they can use when you're part of the party that's mad that they even have phones that are given to them by the government for free. I find that hypocritical. I do appreciate that you answered some of our emails to you. You stated in your prepared form response that giving them food on the street, professionals in the homeless advocacy area state that that perpetuates the problem. National Coalition to Help Homeless says that's not true. They say that's a myth. Their exact words in a study that they did not too long ago. Individuals do not remain homeless because of food sharing programs. People remain homeless for reasons such as lack of affordable housing, lack of a job opportunity, mental health, physical disability. With all the existing barriers that prevent individuals from finding work, earning an adequate wage, affording a safe home, and caring for themselves, remaining homeless is rarely a choice at all, which I reject, Mr. McClellan, when you said, what do you say to the people that want to be out there? It's rarely that's the case. I deal with them every day. We have them in our home. My wife has a house cleaning business where she creates crews of homeless people that are transitioning from the streets into shelters, into rooms. It's just so upsetting to me that we would be even standing here in 2017, even having to talk about not being able to give people food. I reject that you tell me who I can give food to and share food with. I do. I reject it. The pastor quoted a verse that says, to justify why we should follow laws. That verse was also used to justify slavery. Okay? Reverend Martin Luther King told us that if a law is immoral and unjust, then we must reject it. And I reject your ordinance. I'm asking you to rescind the ban of feeding the homeless. We reject it. We're going to have our event on Sunday. There's another event on Thanksgiving morning. There's another one the following Saturday. We're already scheduling weekly events after that out here. We're taking away from resources that we use for other places, and we're going to bring them here until you guys rescind the ban. We reject it. Okay? I hope you guys reconsider. I invite you to come out on Sunday to our event. On a secondary issue, Mr. Colascio, can I have a little more time since you gave the pastor a half hour? I just need 30 seconds.
Sure, go ahead and finish.
Thank you. This man came up here, Mr. Colascio, and talked about being disrespectful, using your cell phone, using the iPad. We all know who that was directed towards. You immediately reached for your iPad and ignored him. That's immature, it's unprofessional, it's disrespectful, and it's dismissive. You really should check yourself on the way you deal with your constituents and the way you deal with people in general.
Next speaker, Mayor, is Mr. Shane Parmalee. Mr. Parmalee. Ms. Parmalee.
Hi, welcome.
Hi. Starting my stopwatch. Shane Parmalee. About 18 years ago, my sister-in-law was diagnosed with schizophrenia. We moved her back from Texas to my sister's house, who lived in El Cajon, where she lived for almost a year. She refused to get mental health treatment, which is often the case. And my in-laws decided to use a tough love approach, and this led to her being homeless in El Cajon. She lived in the neighborhood and slept in the bushes until she disappeared. No one heard from her for about 9 months, and then she finally called. Back then, people still had phone numbers memorized. When we finally picked her up, she had somehow made her way to downtown San Diego. She had lost over 80 pounds. Her skin was hanging off of her from starvation and malnutrition, and now I see why she was forced out of El Cajon. After several years in both hospitals and group homes, I invited her to live with us because she just needed a family. She took her meds and she had a lot of issues, but she made a lot of progress in the 3 years she lived with us. She did really well for about 6 years, and then she secretly stopped taking her medication because she thought she had gotten better, and she just wanted to be like everyone else, and it didn't work. She ended up back in the hospital in group homes. My other sister-in-laws had since moved to Arizona, and they all agreed that she should move out there and be in a group home out there where she could be closer. Within 2 years, one sister had moved to Colorado and the other one had passed away. 2 years ago, my sister-in-law walked out of her group home and has been missing ever since. She's officially missing in Arizona. So wherever she is, I hope that people are sharing food with her. And since I can't give her food, I will continue to do what the Bible taught me, and I have done my whole life, and that is I will feed the hungry. I'd like to invite everyone who still loves thy neighbor to join us this Sunday at Wells Park and to share food with whoever would like it, not based on whether or not they have an address. I find this an extremely scary overreach of the government, and I find it just so insulting that you're collecting food for the homeless and you are running it through a middleman. It would be illegal for all those people coming to the Mother Goose Parade to give that food directly to a person that they see that needs it. And I don't think you thought this all the way through. I get it. If there's too much trash, put out more trash cans. You're never going to have enough housing for the homeless. You're never going to have everybody in a perfect world where they have to come get help. That's wonderful that you guys have so many programs. If I'm mentally ill I think 25% of your population, the homeless population, are veterans. I think it's really odd. Like, you have Veteran of the Year. That's your homeless population. And you're saying nobody can prep hot food and deliver it? And I just really am begging you to reconsider this because I'll be out here breaking it. And I hope a lot of other good, you don't even have to be Christian, just good people, good Americans come out and break this ban. Thank you.
Ma'am, can I ask you a question? You seem very reasonable. I just want to ask, do you understand why we're doing this?
I think I understand the reason that you're using to justify it. I don't think that that's a valid reason. Because when I've talked with and thank you, Mr. McClellan, for calling me. I appreciate that. When it comes down to it, the issue is the spread of hepatitis A, and you're worried about the point of contact of contamination. And so my question is, how is the pastors, number one, they're not getting the 4 to 5 touches now going out into the community. You're expecting people with mental health or addiction issues or just who now have PTSD from being, or because they're veterans or being homeless, to just walk into a church. Those ministers aren't out there making those personal connections with people who then trust them to listen to them, to invite them in. You're shutting down that whole opportunity. And what you're saying, it's not a true thing. If they prep the food there and give it versus prep the food and deliver it in the park, there's no...
No, I understand your point of view. I just want to make sure you understand a couple of things. One is it's about the hepatitis. Just let me... I listen to you. The second, it's a temporary situation.
Temporary, so the long, actually what it projected is to 1 to 2 years, if we're lucky, 2 years. That's what Google it. This is easy information to find.
It's going to be as long as the hepatitis epidemic
Right, which
continues.
usually takes 1 to 2 years.
Yes, so be it, but
Look, find it.
if you can let me finish.
Go ahead.
And then the third one is, there's no lack of feeding. What we're asking the people that are doing these organized feedings in the parks to do is to bring it into a kitchen. Bring it into one of the many places that have kitchens.
So they prepped it in a kitchen, and whether they put it on a plate and hand it to a person in their church, or put it on a plate and hand it to them in the park,
To be completely
when
honest.
does it get contaminated?
Yeah, because it comes out to the park, they take boxes, they put it on the grass, the same grass that people have been defecating on.
Aren't we handing it to people?
Hepatitis is a disease that is transmitted from fecal to
Yes,
oral contact.
I'm a teacher,
So you're putting
I
it in
know.
the same places where people are congregating and not using toilet services.
I didn't realize
So,
the ministers were all throwing the food on the ground before they gave it to people.
You know, if we could have a reasonable conversation, that'd be great.
I'm just listening
But
to your facts.
What I mean by reasonable is there's no reason to be sarcastic and angry. We're trying to prevent...
I think it's funny you're saying the ministers are putting the food on the ground before they give to the people. If that's the issue, then please stop doing that. Just hand it to them.
We have pictures of people putting boxes of food on the ground. If they're not following basic food handling stuff, and we've got an epidemic that's killed over 20 people. It is our obligation to stop that. So we can disagree on whether that's a good policy or not, but I want to keep things where they really are. Nobody's trying to stop feeding of the homeless. The feeding of the homeless continues. It continues throughout multiple locations in El Cajon. Nobody's trying to hurt the homeless. We're trying to prevent disease.
So, but people you have this big list of people who are allowed to go share food at the park?
No.
And they are also allowed to then put food
sorry.
on the ground. The birthday parties, the athletic events,
Yeah.
they can all go do the exact same thing you're talking about the church doing, and you're still letting them do it.
I
So I
think
don't think it's hepatitis A.
I think what you're misunderstanding is that list is places that we're continuing to feed people, not in the park, but in their kitchens, where they have food handling cards, where it's a clean, safe environment.
No, you have a list of the people who are exempt from the food sharing. It's on, I can hear it. Give me a copy. It's on the ordinance that you all voted on. It says birthday parties, athletic events, baptisms. You listed all of the exemptions to this ordinance.
Okay, let me pass this to staff. I'm not understanding.
Mr. Mayor and the City Council, there are exemptions of who can share food in a park. For example, a family getting together is allowed to share food, and there's this sense of shared liability when you do that. And so, as the mayor indicated, this is a temporary ban until the outbreak is declared a non-emergency. We do not think it'll be that much longer. In the meantime, we're actually working with the church community and the faith-based community, and as well as service providers, in developing a long-term policy that will present to the City Council and socialize for public discussion.
Graham, are the public health officials telling you it's going to be several years?
That's the first I've heard that.
Okay.
So long as you have an address, you're allowed to share food at the park. That's what that says.
You know, I think you are politicizing this.
No, actually read it. I'm a little disturbed that you didn't know what it said. You voted on it last time.
Mr. Mayor,
That's disturbing. How do you not know that?
Mr. Mayor, Bill, over here.
Yeah, go ahead, Steve.
To me, one of the reasons why I voted on it is because families, anniversaries, everybody knows each other. Everybody's familiar with each other. That's a different situation than an outside group.
So I guess my question
Excuse me.
folks,
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm really happy to have a long civil discourse that goes till midnight. But I would really like you not to yell and talk from the audience. It makes this disruptive. We can't get anything done. I thank you. Go ahead, ma'am. I'm sorry.
Oh, well, and this was my question. So if I'm having my child's party at the park, I can share food with all of the kids there. What if one of the kids that's invited is homeless? Because there are lots of homeless kids. What if at the park, we see a homeless person, and the kids say, hey, can we give them some pizza and cake too? I have to say no, and then we're supposed to throw all the food in the trash can, and then somebody can dig through it to get the food out? That's legal? I don't see that that's preventing the spread of hepatitis A. I see that that's contributing to it. It would be much better for us to be able to share food with there's so many, like when you start logically breaking down all the scenarios that really do happen at the park, everyone's going to break this law. And it's also just targeting a group of people based on whether or not they have a permanent address. How are you judging who's homeless and who's not? Are we now walking up and going, well, you're kind of shabbily dressed and you have a big bag. Don't give that person food. But that nicely dressed person over there, by all means, offer them something.
Let me just...
That's what your law says.
I need to address what you said. We're talking about groups that their stated specific purpose is to go out and feed people in the park. We're asking these groups not to do that because public health officials have said you've got a crisis on your hand. If you want more people to die, continue that process.
Which public health official told you to stop sharing food? Just cite the source and I'll be happy. I'll go look it up.
This is a massive problem. We've got doctors from the county that are working with every city.
So is there a source or no?
You want to?
I'll look it up. I've been looking. I couldn't find a source that said you should not share, that you should have a food ban.
You know,
he's giving you the.
At this point, this is just becoming oppositional. I wanted to have a conversation where I can explain logically what's going on. I understand.
I understand your logic. I disagree with it, and I think it's full of logical fallacies.
Let's move on then. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Next speaker, Mayor, is Stephanie Harper.
Well, I had a speech all wrote, but wow, I am so disappointed in all of you guys that are sitting there. I believe that you truly need to know the citizens in your city that you're governing. And since we have the biggest population of homeless people and poverty rate in San Diego County, I would think that you guys would want to get to know the poor people. But let's see. This is all your guys' fault. That you guys make the decisions. You guys sit up there. You guys are in charge. With great power comes great responsibility. So the council seems to govern from the top of a building where all of the problems down there look small. Why don't you guys come down here where the problems are, and you'll see how really big they are. I'm going to challenge every one of you guys to spend 48 hours on your city streets that you govern with no food, no money, no help, just the clothes on your back and whatever you can carry. Then you spend 2 nights trying to figure out where to sleep, how to keep warm, and what to eat. But not one of you will do it because you know you couldn't do it. But maybe if you did take that challenge, you'd think twice about feeding our homeless people. If every one of you sitting up there is not ashamed of yourselves, you should be. Because all of us, we're pretty well ashamed of you. Where's the love, the compassion for your fellow human beings? This is why you are to blame for the city's homeless problem and poverty rate. Sorry, Mr. Mayor Wells, you don't get to blame this on the California legislature. So with that being said, the citizens of El Cajon want the ordinance repealed and gone. We're not like you. It bothers us when people are hungry, when people are hurt or helpless. We're not like you. The Lord smiles upon us for walking in His footsteps. We don't agree, and we want this injustice corrected, and we are prepared to fight until you comply. And we will fight, and we will win, and we will feed whoever is hungry, and we will do it despite what you say. We will protest on the steps of City Hall if we have to. Get ready for the battle.
Sarah.
Next speaker, Bonnie Price.
Ms. Price.
I'm back. Pardon me, I'm back. I just wanted to say a couple of things and then address the issue of homelessness. First of all, I want to say thank you to Doug Williford and the rest of you for responding to the citizens who wanted to have ECPAC reopened. And I am so pleased with the decision by Live Nation to come to an agreement with you. Thank you very much, Doug Williford and all the rest of you for your work. And to the citizens out here who think that it doesn't pay to make an effort to bring changes, just let all of you know that citizens helped make this happen. The City Council was going to close ECPAC, and it's going to be reopened refurbished, and it will be used to bring good entertainment here via Live Nation. So thank you all. Secondly, I wanted to say that I really appreciated all the wonderful work you did on Haunt Fest. It was well policed. The program was varied, and I was there working for East County Democratic Club's voter registration. We didn't register many voters this year, but boy, did we give out candy. Dentists are going to be happy we were there because they'll have extra business. Now, as for the issue of homelessness, I know you've heard from the East County Chamber of Commerce group on homelessness, and you've heard a lot of suggestions. I oppose the ban on feeding people. I understand why you're doing it, because of the health issues and perhaps the liability issues. But I think you ought to take a proactive step. I think you ought to prevent homelessness. And the one way you can do that I think would work here is to put in some rent controls. In Santee, they have trailer parks with rent controls, and Randy Vopel was mayor and brought that into fruition. Therefore, as a good Republican, if he can do it, those of you who are up there and are in that party can see your way to do it as well. A lot of senior citizens live in those trailer parks, and they are hurting. And I personally know someone who became homeless because his space rent, went up too fast for his Social Security increases to cover it. So I would really like you to consider establishing rent control and prevent homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Mr. Pete Beauregard.
Well, sir, welcome.
Good afternoon, and good afternoon, council members. When I came back from Vietnam, I was a Navy corpsman with the Marines, and ended up in El Toro. And I opened up, where I helped found a free clinic, which was to treat street people. This was back in '71. And we dealt a lot with hepatitis. We dealt with a lot of infectious diseases. And working in the streets, we found that it took, because we weren't getting paid for it, we found out that we were working from a kind of a higher power within ourselves. Just like the people here that are requesting a ban to have you get rid of this ban, they are working from a higher power within themselves, just like the clergy, just like these police officers, just like these firemen. And I'm making a request that the City Council search that higher power within yourselves and find it that when you're dealing with a situation with hepatitis A, and I know you've got the health department supporting a lot of your efforts, but there are things called universal precautions. When I was working in a serious lab situation with highly contagious disease, we would use these precautions. The homeless are not feeding us. We are feeding them. And there are precautions, just like the young lady said about families are visiting the same spots where these people are, that they are sharing a risk. We all share a risk when we eat out in public. But if a person wants to come and do the humanitarian act of love, just feeding another human being, then why not? It sounds like a good idea. And I think there was a guy, 2,000 years ago that did the same thing. So my request is, find it in your heart and think about it make it happen, and make it so. And thank you very much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for coming.
The next speaker, Mr. Mayor, is Mr. William Johnson.
Mr. Johnson, welcome.
Hi there. So I didn't really prepare anything here to say, but I just want to reiterate some of the things that were already said and say that food is a human right. It's a fundamental human right, and everybody deserves a meal. But what's also a human right is housing. Everybody deserves to have a roof over their head. And the issue with homelessness here is the fact that we aren't providing that human right. And the reason why we are feeding people on the street is because we are trying to just do a little something, a little Band-Aid on the bigger problem here, which is the fact that people are getting pushed out of their homes. We have massive income inequality. People can barely put food on their plates, let alone put toward their rent. And there needs to be a lot done about this. But something that is really infuriating to me is that this hepatitis A outbreak is a direct result of our homelessness problems, and that we aren't fixing homelessness. To put everybody in a home and to actually to end homelessness costs about anywhere between 30 to 40% of the total cost that we are paying right now. I'm talking in total city services, in emergency services, and all the other homeless services that we're giving. And there's study after study showing that it's anywhere between 30 to 40%. The latest one is from UCI. And we can do something about this. We can end homelessness. But we need to start focusing on the problem and not focusing on people who are trying to just help somebody on the street. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The last speaker, Mayor, is Mr. Humbert Cabrera.
Hello, Humbert. Welcome.
Welcome. Good evening. I wasn't going to speak on this subject, but I kind of got passionate sitting there. There are prayers for everyone. The council, the people, the homelessness, the people whose hearts are in the right place, the clergy, the people working every day to help these homeless people. The people that are out in the street. Now, I've had a mother-in-law, and I've had a sister-in-law, and I've had myself be in those similar situations, and I've helped those people. But that's not enough. Everybody's heart, I'm so glad to see my fellow citizens here, seems to be in the right place. They want to feed them, they want to take care of them, and they want to treat them with dignity. I think part of treating them with dignity is not treating them as second-class citizens. And also, part of that is also the interesting fact that there's a lot of passion behind this. We cannot necessarily get people that are from outside of town to understand everything El Cajon has done. El Cajon, since 7 years ago, I started working on a food bank that's going to be open 24/7. Salvation Army has bought into it. Next year, it's probably going to be built with the help of the city manager and the rest of everybody else. The city manager has also worked on bringing a lot of jobs into town. The council has worked on decreasing regulations so that we could bring people like Fox Shocks into town, which is supplying over 300 to 500 new jobs. We had a citizens task force, and I think it's something that everybody from outside, because let me tell you, I've been to San Diego, I've been to North County, I've been to their councils, and I've seen how they're handling the homeless problem. Nobody compares to East County. East County is not like San Diego. We are working as a private companies, public sector, and also 29 to over 30, almost 40 different non-for-profit organizations working in synergy together. We've been doing this for 2 years. So I invite my fellow citizens, become part of the Homeless Task Force, become part of the Salvation Army, become part of CASA Group, become part of Crisis House, become part of these things, because they are solutions. If we find somebody that's homeless and we're able to connect with them, somebody said we weren't connecting with them. I personally connected with them over 6 times. We have their names, they're registered. El Cajon knows almost every single one of them personally and their real names. We've now putting them into a database, and we know how to service them. Now there's a group that helps the veterans, a group that helps the people that need to have unification, and I'm actually on the unification task force, which helps bring families together and gets them into different things. So I invite everybody, come and help us so that we can really solve the problem rather than just throwing food at them.
Thank you, Howard. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
We don't have any other speakers, Mr. Mayor.